Hello and welcome back to the YouTube home of the Reptile Goth. As always, I am Morgan. Today I come to you guys from the indoors because currently it has been raining for nearly a week straight off and on, but the show must go on. So today we are going to be talking about a book I recently read. And the book in question is Transforming Plastic: From Pollution to Evolution by Albert Bates. This one, right here. And before we begin, a little bit about the author specifically. He has been writing books about pollution and other adjacent subjects since the 1990s, and he's written about 18 books about climate history and ecology. And he currently is the founder and director of the Global Village Institute for Appropriate Technology, so he knows what he's talking about with this stuff, and I found that this book was very thoroughly researched based on the bibliography and the references that he did use in the book itself. Now, with that out of the way, I actually did enjoy this book. There were some chapters that I found were a little hard to get through for someone who doesn't necessarily know what some of the technical language means. Although he did attempt to break it down, it's just, unfortunately, when you're talking about molecular structure and the actual makeup of the molecules in question, it does get a little tough to read. But I don't think that took away from the message of the book at all. The book itself is a little more than 100 pages long, and essentially what it does is it goes through the basics of different plastics, breaks them down into a little more understandable terms for those of us who happen to not be chemists, and addresses the problem of specifically plastic pollution on a global scale. At some points, it does get a little repetitive. Towards the end, he does repeat some of the things that he says in the beginning chapters when he's specifically defining the different types of plastics and talking about the differences. But I do understand that at that point in the book, if you didn't read it as fast as I did, that reminder is helpful. And he does outline a bunch of different measures being taken in different organizations that are working to address the issues with recycling different kinds of plastics, reuse, and talks about some of the issues of bio-based plastics, and just because it's bio-based doesn't mean it's also biodegradable, what it means to be biodegradable, what it means to be compostable. And it's a very interesting read for anybody who is interested in this issue, and the entire final chapter offers up an idea of what solutions to the problem may look like, instead of just dwelling on the problem at hand and saying that, oh, we're past the point of no return. It's actually trying to be optimistic about the state of the world right now, and I truly appreciate that from books like this, especially on this subject. So one of the main points in the book that I legitimately found the most fascinating, and probably one of the biggest reasons to read this book, not just that it is a fairly it's not necessarily optimistic the entire time. It's just not as fear-mongering as some articles, some things I've read during my own research for different projects that I'm working on at school. The book itself breaks down what different countries and around the world are doing to address this problem, and speaking as someone who lives in the United States, it breaks down exactly what has been happening here to prevent this country from also following suit and moving towards a more sustainable future with plastic. And it also breaks down why plastics are never going away. There are certain uses in which a biodegradable plastic is not necessarily feasible, like medical implants, especially since some of the current technologies being looked at biodegradability of plastics, there needs to be something in the molecular structure that triggers it to break down so it doesn't biodegrade when you're using it. However, it will break down with when exposed to a certain trigger, like salt water is one of the things they're looking at. And you don't necessarily want all plastic to be made like that. And that is fascinating. I learned a lot of things about different types of plastics that I didn't necessarily know, that I found were completely contrary to things that I had been taught just by general media, general sources. And it's always interesting with stuff like this that you think is common knowledge and find out how much is misleading, whether it's intended to be when it's taught to you or not. The last chapter especially breaks down the general way society has to shift to make these changes, and how currently the changes aren't going to be made at the moment because it is expensive to do the research. It is still expensive to produce the greener, cleaner plastics. And unless something in society shifts to make it so the opposite is true, or they're at least on par financially for companies to produce or utilize, it's not really going to change. So personally, I do highly recommend this book. It is a fairly recent book. It was published last year. I believe it was published towards the end of last year, if I'm not mistaken. And most of his bibliography is made up of studies and books that are fairly recent as well, with the oldest one I see dating back to 1988, which in the grand scheme of scientific research is older. However, it is one of the baselines of some bio-based plastic research that was referenced. So if you're looking for a book that's not necessarily going to make you feel like this entire situation is hopeless while you're learning about the plastic crisis, learning about things that you can do, highly recommend this book. And it's just, I think that it breaks things down nicely in a very readable way, and it's fairly concise. 100 pages for a book like this isn't really that long, and there are plenty of places where when he's going over like the math and equations used to calculate and break down, actually explains it and gets that stuff done at the very beginning, so it doesn't just weigh down the rest of the point. so that is all I really have for you guys today, and thank you for watching. Again, the book is Transforming Plastic: From Pollution to Evolution by Albert Bates. I think I picked it up for like $9 max on Amazon, so highly recommend it. I will see you all next time.
Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you have not already done so. Also remember to follow me on all my social medias. The links are down in the description below, and check out thereptilegoth.com. If you found any value in this and you would like to support the channel, assuming you have the means to do so, go ahead and check out the Patreon. Again, that link is going to be down in the description below, just like everything else. See you next time.